Today we're going to take a look at the brand new Marantz Amp 20 and AV 20 preamp processor. So thank you to Marantz for sending this out for us to review. If you want to pick anything up in this video, you can find links down below in this video's description. All right, so let's go ahead and get this thing unboxed. Inside the box, we get the Odyssey microphone, power cable, accessories box containing the quick start guide, 2 Bluetooth and Wi-Fi antennas, remote control, batteries for the remote control, labels and AM antenna, and the Odyssey microphone stand. What we have here is the exact same design as the AV10. So you get the nice aluminum front fascia, you get the porthole in the center, you got your volume knob here, which has very nice tension to it. You got your selection knob on the left-hand side, you got a 1/4 inch headphone jack on the right, and then your power button on the left. And you also have the nice texture on each side. And of course, behind the door, you get your LED panel right up front, dead center. You get your setup microphone and USB input, direct selection on the left-hand side, and then you have your controls on the right-hand side. All right, so around back, we get your HDMI 2.1 inputs, which are 8K 60 compliant, up to 40 gigabits per second. We get your 3 HDMI outputs, one for Zone 2, also with eARC support. HDMI also supports AMD FreeSync as well as ALLM. On the bottom half, we get your pre-outs for all 13 channels. And also, this does have DIRAC Live Bass management as well. So you have 4 independent subwoofer outs for either RCA or XLR. That pertains also to the 13 channels as well. I should also mention that DIRAC Art will be coming to the AV20 in a future update for an additional cost as well. No time frame at the time of this video. You also have balanced XLR ins. You've got a flasher, trigger, remote control, RS-232, composite video ins, which I'm very surprised to still see, coax, optical in, and your phono input is over here on the left-hand side. All right, so size-wise, we are looking at about 17 inches in width by 7.5 inches in height by 16.25 inches in depth. So while this does look exactly the same width-wise as the AV10, this is a lot more shallower. The AV10 is a lot more deeper, so this will be easier to fit on your AV rack. Now moving on over to the Amp 20, design-wise this perfectly matches the AV20 in that it does have the same front fascia. You do get the porthole design with the meter in the dead center. You can turn the meter off, and then on the opposite right corner you can turn the dimmer on and off. You also have the power button here, as well as a nice little pebble texture on each side. Now width-wise, this measures exactly the same width-wise as the AV20, coming in at 17. Depth-wise, it's the same as well at around 16.25. And then height-wise, we're looking at about the same as well at 7.25 inches in height. And this does weigh a nice hefty 39.7 pounds. So not super heavy, also not super light. So moving around back, on the bottom portion of the amplifier, we have your on-off switch for auto standby. We've got your amp control and trigger in and out, as well as your flasher, remote control RCA in and out, RS-232, and your power inlet. We've got heavy-duty binding posts for all 12 channels. This is rated at 200 watts per channels into 8 ohms, or 400 watts per channel into 4 ohms. And then you can select BTL or bridge mode. So effectively you would use these 2 top channels. This would be your negative, this would be your positive, and this will be rated at 400 watts into 8 ohms. So you can bridge down this entire amplifier from 12 channels down to 6, or any combination, whatever you choose. And then you have your unbalanced RCA inputs and then your balanced XLR inputs for all 12 channels. All right, I know what you're thinking. Isn't this a 12-channel amplifier, but the AV20 is a 13-channel processor? Why would I pick up a 12-channel amplifier for a 13-channel processor? And how would I make that work? Well, I'm gonna hand it over to Gene.
So people are probably wondering what's the difference between the AMP10 and the AMP20. They use identical amplifier modules, and in fact they use the same power supply. Both of these amplifiers have a 1500 watt SMPS regulated power supply. So I have all the bench tests of the AMP10. The AMP20 should measure identically, it's just less channels. So the AMP10 has 16 channels, the AMP20 has 12 channels. There's a bit of a dilemma there. So if you buy an AV20 with 13 channels of processing, you're missing a channel of amplification. What do you do if you're trying to support all those channels? The solution that I came up with is you buy an AMP10, not the AMP20 in that case. You buy an AMP10, which is 16 channels, and if you bridge the front 3 channels, your LCRs, you gain 3 dB of headroom and you get to use all the channels. That's really the best solution in that case. Now, if you're only doing 11 channels, get the AMP20 and then bridge your center channel so you get 3 dB more headroom to your center channel and you still use all the channels. Just a recap of the measurements of the AMP10, which should translate to the AMP20. This amplifier is a really well-designed amplifier. It's based on the Class D Ice Edge module. So it's 200 watts a channel at 8 ohms, about 400 watts a channel at 4 ohms, and that's with 1 channel driven or up to 7 channels driven according to my bench tests. Because it's a regulated supply, you're not going to get more power with 1 channel driven versus 7 channels driven. It keeps the power sag down with multiple channels driven. That's the real advantage. The bridging factor is also really cool with this amplifier, which I've done in my own system. I have pearlescent S7Ts using the AMP10 and the AV10, and I'm getting close to 500 watts a channel at 4 ohms when I'm driving those pearlescent speakers, and I don't have any problems. I drive it at reference level. I even run LFE through them. The amp has some serious balls to it, and it sounds great. I do recommend that you give some good ventilation to this amplifier. Even though it's a Class D, it does run a little bit warm. And if you're wondering about the noise and distortion, the noise and distortion of this amplifier is excellent. I measured 96 dB sinad. The channel separation is excellent on it. The frequency response is it's load invariant, so whether you're driving an 8 ohm or 4 ohm or even a 2 ohm load, the frequency response doesn't change, which is a good characteristic to have in an amplifier. So definitely check out my full bench test report of the AMP10. Most of those measurements are going to translate over to the AMP20.
So what we're going to do now is quickly go through some of the settings in the processor. You can of course access all of these settings on screen, but just for clarity, we're going to use the web UI. So in order to use the web UI, you would input your IP address of the AV20 into the address bar, and then that'll take you right here into the web UI. So the first section here is audio. We've got subwoofer level adjust, so if you've got 4 independent subwoofers or if you're using 1, whatever, you can adjust the level here from a -12 up to a +12. We've got bass sync, you got surround parameter. If you turn on cinema EQ, this will enable a slight roll off on the top end. For loudness management, if you turn this on, you will have access to dynamic range compression. And then you can also limit the low frequency effects. So if you are using this for late night viewing, this might come in useful, but for now we're going to turn that off. We've got MDAX, which will help restore compressed audio to give it some more fidelity. That's grayed out right now because I have something playing in the background. For scale, you got 2 options here. For limit, you can limit the volume output. For power level on, and then you got your mute level as well. These are your Odyssey settings and then DIRAC Live settings. I've got those grayed out right now. For graphic EQ, if you turn this on, you can see that this will populate and you will get several bands for either all channels, left and right only, or each. If you select each, you can apply your own EQ adjustments to every individual speaker there. And then for audio DAC filter, filter 1 will give you a slight roll off on the top end, while 2 will give you slightly better extension. And here are the measurements directly from Audioholics.com. Next section is the video settings. So here's HDMI. HDMI audio out, we've got it for AVP. We've got HDMI pass-through is turned on. For pass-through source, you can select your source there. RC source, you can power on plus the source or just the source only from the remote. You can turn HDMI CEC control on or off, ARC on or off, TV auto switching, power controls, and power saving mode. For output settings, have it set for auto, for TV1 or TV2 only. We've got OSD on screen display settings. It's got a screensaver you can turn on and off. For 4K, 8K signal format, you can put this on standard, enhanced, which is 4K HDR, or 8K enhanced if you are using this with 8K material. For input assign, you can assign a different connection per HDMI input here. You can rename sources, you can hide sources, and you can adjust the source level input. Next section is your speaker section. So over here for speaker layout, here's your amp assign. We've got 13.1, 11.1, 11.1 plus front B, and then custom. So under custom, you have all of these options here. So you can assign any one of these on or off. For front wides, on or off, height speakers, you can choose between 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, or none. For subwoofers, I've got this set up as 4, or if you have none, you can do that as well. For subwoofer mode, I've got this on directional, or you can put it on standard. So directional bass will send bass from the nearest speakers over to the nearest subwoofer. Okay, so this was a feature that I was really interested in trying. Now, I do have a turn off, so I've tried this multiple times by sending the bass from the nearest speaker over to the nearest subwoofer. And at least on my turn off, I have not been able to successfully had it make too much of a difference. So when I heard Denon Marantz came out with the same, essentially same feature, sending bass below the crossover from the nearest speaker over to the subwoofer, I thought maybe they were trying something a little bit different. But with my testing with it, I tried all of the Dolby demos, I tried all of the turn-off demos, I watched Minecraft, Captain America, every episode of Andor Season 2, and except for maybe a couple of the Dolby demos, I think the Leaf demo, maybe the Fold demo, I got a little bit of a sensation that bass did move around the room if I was really listening for it. But other than that, I can confidently say that I did not notice really anything noticeable from all the movies and TV shows that I watched. Maybe if I had some more time with this to try it out, maybe I could dial it in better. I did try a crossover point from 80 Hertz up to 120. I feel like maybe 120 gave me the best results on those couple of Dolby demos, but for all the movie stuff, it just didn't work for me. And then setting the crossover that high, I felt like it took away from the main speakers just in general. So, you know, I kept the LFE at 120, and then my normal speaker crossover is at 80 Hertz. And I felt like it really didn't do anything, at least anything meaningful in my room. So if you guys have tried it and you got something to work that maybe I'm missing, I would definitely like to hear about it. But just with the time that I've had with it, I really didn't have anything really noticeable or really effective that would make me want to use that setting over the standard settings. Your mileage may vary. Again, if something is working for you guys, then leave a comment down below. And then you can go under settings. These are for the pre-outs. You can assign the pre-out per speaker, so this is very flexible. But for my use case, I am going to set it back to 13.1 channels, which is essentially 9 lower channels, 4 height channels, and then 4 subwoofers. Next section is distances. You can adjust these manually if you want, or if you have DIRAC do it, DIRAC can do it automatically for you. You've got different levels here. You've got your crossover point. You can go from full range all the way up to 250 Hertz. You got your speaker presets. You've got 2 different slots. You got DIRAC Live Setup. Subwoofer output, you can do LFE or LFE plus main. Now, if you want, Gene had come up with a setting with Marantz to add LFE into your main speakers. So going back over to the crossover section, you have to make sure that your front speakers are set on full range. Once you do that, you can go back to subwoofer output. You can see that you still have subwoofer output, LFE or LFE plus main, but you also have bass extraction low pass filter, anywhere from 250 Hertz down to 40 Hertz. But now you've opened up distribution. This will adjust the amount of LFE signal sent to the full range floor speakers. You can choose between -20 dB up to 0 dB. Or of course, you can just turn this off altogether. So you can kind of tailor how much LFE signal gets to your front speakers for that extra kick, if your speakers can handle it. You got your low pass filter for your subwoofer from 80 Hertz up to 250. Then we've got distribution, front speaker, 2-channel playback. You can do this manually. So you can change the crossover, subwoofer yes or no, and then all of these other settings here as well. If you have a butt kicker or some crosins, you can apply tactile transducers here in that section. That's grayed out because I'm not using it. We've got your network settings, HEOS settings, and then we got your general setting here as well. And this does support 3 separate zones. And then on the lower portion of the screen, you can change your inputs. All right, so the AV20 does come with 2 flavors of room correction. You've got out of the box, you've got Odyssey, or if you have a subscription to DIRAC, you can also use DIRAC Live. So for this test, I'm going to use DIRAC Live. Once you download the DIRAC program, it should populate, and then you should see Marantz AV20 show up on the list here. So click on Select. You should see that everything is connected in the upper right-hand corner. I am using a UMic 1 as the calibration microphone, so if you have that, definitely select on that, and then you're going to click on Proceed to Volume Calibration. So for brevity's sake, I'm not going to measure all 13 channels. I'm just going to do 2 channels, which is in my 2-channel setup. So here we've got the master volume. You can go all the way up. If you go all the way to the top, it'll say locked, but I'm going to keep it around 3/4 of the way up. Mic gain is at 0 dB, and then once you hit on play, it should play a test tone out of the front left speaker. I'm going to go over to the right speaker and make sure that they pretty much match. So you want to make sure that they at least match. Click on Proceed to select arrangement, and you can see that we've got a few different options here. We've got tightly focused, which is for a single user experience. We've got focused, so this is going to be the visual representation. So if you want to share it with maybe like 2 people, you might want to choose that. And then we have wide imaging. So if you have a larger space, most likely for your home theater, you're going to want to choose wide imaging. But for me, I'm only going to be sitting in here by myself. So click Proceed to Measure. And then you're going to have to move the mic in all these different positions. So we've got 9 different positions. The main position is going to be at your MLP or your main listening position. So we're just going to start off on that. Click on Measure Selected Position. So once the measurement is done, you're going to move your microphone to all these other positions here on the map. And then once you do all that, you're going to go to Proceed to Filter Design. Once you do that, it's going to calculate, and then you will see that depending on what you have, what subscription you have, I've got the full room correction. So here we can see this is what DIRAC calls their curtain. So you can limit the room correction. So let's say I wanted to start at, let's just say 82 hertz up to, let's say 916 hertz. So this would only correct this specific portion. But if you want to do full range correction, just go all the way down and then go all the way up. And then you can see that you can correct the entire frequency range. Also on the right side of the screen here, you can see here's my front left speaker, and here's my front right speaker. So if you want to adjust this curve yourself, you're going to click on this little icon there. You can see all of these different points. So if you wanted to make your own room correction curve, you would click on these specific points and you would choose whatever kind of curve that you wish. So if you want to just roll off this on the high end there, you can do that, or whatever you choose. So whatever you think sounds the best, then do that at your own will. Once you get this as good as you can possibly get it, click on Proceed to Filter Export, and you would choose up to 3 DIRAC slots. So you've got 1, 2, and 3. So let's say I'm going to go on 1. You can give it a name, and then click on Export Filter, and this will shoot it over to the AV20. And you can see in the upper right-hand corner, it should say Filter Transferred to Slot 1. Then from within the AV20, you can go ahead and select that from the drop-down menu. Now, this is not a step-by-step tutorial on how to use DIRAC. If you want more information on how to do it, there are several videos on the channel, or you can go to audioholics.com for that. Now, keep in mind that DIRAC is an extra add-on, which you can purchase from their site for an additional cost. After running DIRAC, I installed the Marantz in my dedicated theater in a 9.1.4 configuration using 1 extra channel from my Trinnov amp to power the center channel, which also puts out 200 watts per channel. My speakers are all RBH 661s, and I've got 4 RBH 1212 subwoofers. I ran a couple demos from Midway to A Quiet Place from the Kaleidoscape, and this is my subjective take of the performance of this Marantz duo in my theater. I tell you what, I am a little bit surprised that Gene asked me to review the AV20, especially the AMP20, because I wasn't exactly enamored with the AMP10 when I reviewed it on my channel. I just thought it sounded soft and kind of lacked any detail. But to be fair, I did review the AMP10 with my Trinnov, and I did not use any room correction because my idea when reviewing receivers or processors with amplifiers, I kind of want to just base the sound quality on the amplifier sound signature itself or the pre-pro or receiver sound signature itself without having room correction alter the sound whatsoever. So that was kind of my rationale going into reviewing the AMP10 with the Trinnov, and also I think I had it paired up with a Cambridge Edge 2-channel setup. So for this video, because I know a lot of people hated that I did that, I did use DIRAC Live room correction for this specific review. So things are changed up just a little bit from when I originally reviewed the AMP10. Okay, so actually this is a little bit better than what I thought it was going to sound like. So when you first get the intro of those planes flying over, from what I remember when I had the 7705, 7708, I think I had the 8805 as well. I recall some of that directionality wasn't always as precise as what I'm getting right now with my Trinnov, but I will say that this sounds more akin, actually it sounded better than what I had remembered with those previous generation Marantzes. So this actually gives me a sensation of when I used to have the Emotiva RMC1s, where that actually was a little bit closer to what I'm getting with my Trinnov now. So as far as like the placement of the planes flying overhead, the explosions and the planes flying back at you, I get that really clearly with this new Marantz. So that's definitely a plus. You see, this is another great scene as well in A Quiet Place. So the alien is creeping up on the stairs in the top left front speaker. And as the camera kind of pans around, you can kind of hear it move downwards towards the stairs. And this is very precise. Again, just like in the Midway, in Midway, you can hear it get closer as the camera pans on screen. So it's really precise in that aspect. And also that ticking clock where she winds it, you can hear it right on the left side of the room. It's like, it's really faint in the background. And as the camera kind of moves in closer to it, when the shot switches over to it, it gets louder. So that way you know that that slight ticking is still that clock, just in case you forget what it is. So I really like that placement in the soundstage, which is the same kind of feeling that I got when I had the Emotiva RMC1, which again is still pretty close to kind of what I have been used to with my Trinnov. So as far as just like sound panning with Midway and then with A Quiet Place, I mean, this is like right up there. Top tier stuff from Marantz for sure. Also, the speakers that I'm using right now are the RBH 661s, and they're fairly small speakers. So the AMP20 didn't really have that much work to do because, you know, they don't need the amplifier to drive so hard. So as far as that's concerned, I mean, I didn't have any issues with the amp ever running out of steam. And I was cranking the system pretty loud with my time with the whole system. But as far as noise floor, the amp is definitely just as quiet as my Trinnov amp, which is pretty much dead silent. Now, as far as me saying that this reminded me of the Emotiva RMC1, at that particular time, I was running the Marantz 8805, and I believe I had the Mark II as well. So I had like both generations. And I've always been kind of vocal in the past, at least on my channel, that I've always thought the Marantz sound signature was a little bit soft for my personal taste, which kind of affected the processing where I just felt like these little subtle effects and just sound movement in general when it's panning through the soundstage or through the speakers wasn't always as precise as what I'm used to now with my Trinnov. So when I moved from the 8805 over to the Emotiva, it was almost kind of like just the directionality was just so much better. I'm not knocking the 8805, so if you have it, I'm not knocking it. I just found like the detail in general would just sounded better on the Emotiva. So I was kind of expecting me not to be all that impressed with the AV20. Whether I was sitting in the front row or the back row, just the precision was all there and is very detailed. As far as like processing and putting stuff in the soundstage, top tier, 100%. Now, as far as the sound signature of the amplifier on its own, it's kind of hard to tell with 13 channels going at the same time. So I did move this over to my 2-channel setup. In here, I've got the Marantz hooked up to a pair of Perlison R5 T-towers, and for streaming I am using an Eversolo DMP A6 Gen 2 with Rune and Qobuz as my source. Now I have been living with the Stark Sound A3, which is a 3-channel amplifier. So to make things even, I did bridge the Marantz Amp 20 to put out 400 watts per channel, which brings it closer to the Stark's 320 watts per channel. Now me comparing this to the Stark Sound isn't meant to say that one amplifier is better than the other one, but since I have been living with the Stark Sound for the past few months now, I kind of needed a reference point to what the sound of the Marantz actually sounded like. So for me to say that it sounded this way or that way, just going off of memory, probably not the most reliable since my memory isn't that great. I just needed a reference point, and for right now, my reference point is the Stark Sound amplifier. Now I did listen to a few of my demo songs that I always listen to for these reviews. I had Dominique Fils-Aimé, some Billie Eilish, and Rolling Stones' Sympathy for the Devil. And with that particular song, within the sound stage, we've got the congas on the right-hand side, we've got Mick Jagger dead center, we've got Keith Richards a little bit off to the left. And with that particular song, I did think that the presentation on the Marantz was more forward sounding, whereas on the Stark Sound, it definitely sounded like it was coming more from behind my speakers and every place in between. So I think with that more forward presentation on the Marantz, that's probably why I was getting such good detail in the home theater. But now that I'm thinking about it, I wasn't a fan of the Amp 10 because I just felt like the high-end detail was kind of rolled off and it was really warm sounding. I think having the Amp 20 paired up with the Marantz AV 20, I think that's a much better pairing than what I had with the Amp 10 and the Cambridge Edge. So there is a good chance that the Amp 10 would have sounded better with the AV 10. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the Cambridge Edge to pair up with the Amp 20 to make a more informed decision on whether or not this sounded better than the Amp 10 and the Cambridge. So I do have to rely on what I have on hand, which leaves the Stark A3. But as far as like bass response, the mid-range, especially with like male vocals, I felt like the Stark Sound had just a little bit more depth in male vocals. Not that the Marantz was light in any way, but just slightly going back and forth A-B comparison. Just the Stark Sound had a little bit more weight, especially from like male vocals. But for like pop music, Christine and the Queens, I listened to Same Old by Vince Staples. That's got a ton of bass in it. I felt for like rap music and pop music, you know, that type of stuff, it felt like it was a wash between the two. So I don't think one sounded better as far as like pop and rap music. So both amps definitely carried a lot of weight. Whereas I thought being like a Class D amplifier, maybe the Marantz would fall a little bit behind from the Stark Sound, but it really hung in there. It really does have some balls to it. But I was surprised at how well that this amplifier sounded. I didn't think it was gonna be all that good. I thought maybe its strengths would be for home theater, but I still think it leans more on the warmer side, and it's not pretending to be some 2-channel audiophile amplifier. So I do think that the Stark Sound in comparison does have a bit more transparency to it. But still, it did sound great and not quite as warm sounding as what I remembered the Amp 10 to sound. So if you're going to use this for home theater and music, I think it's got some pretty good musical chops. Now, as an extra, this is the first time that I am trying this for myself, is going to be the use of HEOS. So HEOS is Denon and Marantz's multi-home wireless speaker setup. So in order to get this working, what you would do, in the upper right-hand corner, tap on the settings, click Add Device, make sure your speaker or device is plugged in, click on Next. I'm going to be hooking up a Denon speaker, the 250, so I'm going to click on that, click on Speaker, choose Denon Home 250, make sure that the light is solid and yellow, click Next, and here you can see it's really simple. This is literally the first time I'm doing this. And it says the Denon Home 250 is found, and then click on Next. Now it looks like it's going through the accessories setup, so this is going to take a few seconds. Here it's going to join your network, and then the speaker is going to have a name to it. It's going to join your wireless network, and once it's complete, it'll say Setup Complete. Here we're going to give it a name. I'm just going to keep it as the Denon Home 250. Click on Next. To optimize the bass response of your speaker, indicate where in the room your speaker is located. So we've got either open space next to one wall or shelf, in a corner, or near two walls. So right now I've got it next to a wall. And if you have more speakers to add, click another one. Otherwise, I am done. And that is it. And if you want to add HEOS, clearly it's very easy to set up. Now, once you get everything connected, you can go back to the HEOS's homepage, and you can see here that we've got HEOS favorite stations, different music services. You get direct access to sources, so you can choose AV inputs on your AVR or processor. You can select the USB input on the back of the speaker. We've got the inputs on the back of the Denon, Bluetooth, and then AirPlay. If you want to add some of your own music services, you can add Pandora, Spotify Music, Tidal, SiriusXM. Unfortunately, I don't use any of these services, but I do use Qobuz, which is their newest addition to the HEOS functions. So here I've got Qobuz loaded up on my phone, and if we go down to the lower left corner, we can see that Qobuz Connect is now active on the Marantz and also on the Denon 250. So once I click on the Denon Home 250, you can see that it is now the main connection up in the top here. Now if we go back to the HEOS app on the iPad, if you go over to Rooms, you can see here I've got in two different rooms, I've got the Marantz AV20, and then on the bottom here, I've got the Denon Home 250. If you want to group all the rooms together, click on All Rooms. It'll say, do you want to group all the rooms? You can click on Continue, and then it's going to start to group the Denon 250 and then the Marantz together. So now if you're playing music, music will play not only from the Marantz, it'll also play from the Denon 250. As you can see, this was super simple to set up, and depending on what speaker you get, it's a really good sounding speaker. The 250 is perfectly acceptable in my office for some background music. And then, of course, if you want to get better music, you can go into the AV20. If you go into here, you go on the bottom settings here, you can see that we have different sound modes. So you can go either direct, pure direct, you can go Dolby Audio, Neural X, or multi-channel stereo. So you can change the sound format from within the app itself over to the AV20. So that's pretty convenient. At the time of this video, the AV20 is selling for $6,000 and the AMP20 is also selling for $6,000. Now keep in mind that this is my own subjective opinion on the sound quality and the performance of both of these pieces. However, having spent a good solid week with them, I will say that I would highly, for the first time, consider owning a Marantz as kind of my end game system. Maybe not in my home theater because I need more channels than 13, but if I only needed 13 channels, I would be totally satisfied with this setup. So if you wanted to use this for home theater or even for 2-channel as like a dual purpose system, so it's definitely got not only home theater chops, but musical chops as well. And if you wanted to use this with an entire array of HEOS speakers throughout your house, multi-channel music was no problems, and the app was super easy to use. Great sounding pieces, and I would be happy with either one. Now, if you guys have gotten a chance to try these out, then leave a comment down below and let us know how everything has worked out for you guys. If you want to get additional content or if you want direct access to Gene, consider joining patreon.com/audioholics. Thanks for watching, and remember, keep listening